there is over-sexualization in horror, and there's a way to critique it without being such a heavy-handed, like, look, I'm a good person. Like, it's giving, like, doth protest too much.
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to tell me?
Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Gabe. And we're the ghouls next door.
door.
They're the teens next door that life is hard.
Yeah, we have big emotions and everything is a lot. And honestly, I mean, I get it. We're in our 30s, so we're not teens anymore, but it's not so not true. Like, I do have big feelings still as an adult.
Yeah.
Just not as hormone influenced, I guess,
Yeah.
until I'm older, and then it will be again. Cyclical.
Yeah.
We'll all just be but teenagers again.
Yeah. We're teenagers, and it's a world that is very different from when we were teenagers. And it has different horrors, or more accessible horrors, I would say. Yeah. We're the media literacy show from a horror lens, where we explore the real life, historical, sociological influences behind our cinematic fears. And we are starting a new season called Teenagers Scare the Living Shit Out of Me. Teenagers Scare Me. And we're kicking it off with a revisit of the 2018 film Assassination, which we did cover in the way back machine of ghouls. It was relatively unscripted, chill conversation that we were having in that episode, and so not as structured as our usual ones. It was like we were taking a break, we wanted to do something fun.
Yeah.
And that film was that.
Honestly, I don't know who we used to be, Gabe, where this was the fun film. That's crazy. It was so stressful this time. Comparatively, like, we took a break to have fun.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, I mean, it was still in par in what we do. And so it wasn't like, I don't know, it's hard to do. But I do remember a fan and friend of ours, like, watched the film and was like, have you all covered it? And I was like, yeah. Of course we did. But it was a long time ago, and I didn't rewatch or listen to the episode because I was like, I don't want to do that. So I don't recommend that you do that. We have a new one for this.
Yeah. Listen to this one.
Yeah. And it's, it's like we covered it in 2020, right before we were really getting our groove on media literacy and the intention behind what we were doing. And so it was like, we really didn't have our, like, sea legs yet. And so we do now. Yeah.
Look at how we grow.
Yeah. So we're going to be revisiting this film, talking about a teenager and like the horrors that be around that. And specifically, this film is really covering that access to technology and, like, things just being readily accessible in that way. I will say there are things to enjoy about this film. And I will talk about some of the things I enjoyed, however begrudgingly. But if this film means a lot to you and you really like it, you might be surprised by the Ghouls' approach to it. I wanted to like it, and there's parts of it that I did. I think the theme of my section will be that I really, really wish it was made by somebody else.
Yeah. And that it's good that we're recovering it, because at the time, I don't think we knew everything that we needed to know about approaching it. And now we know a lot more as we grow as humans. And feel similarly myself. So if this is your favorite thing ever, maybe, sorry. Well, maybe also listen, because then, then you learn things.
Yeah, think about why it's your favorite. And I'm thankful that it exists. I think it is saying things.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, at some point you kind of cross that threshold of like critique into perpetuation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's this film. And so I think like there are moments in when you like, if you can ignore some of the glaring faults with it, I think you could have a good time and you could be like, yeah, heck yeah. And maybe feel some victory. It's no, I take that back. You can't feel any victory. There isn't any. It's not. I disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we hop in
Hop
and
in.
let me tell you about Assassination Nation, and you as a viewer and a listener of the Ghouls with your media literacy glasses on can digest the information of this episode and make come to your own conclusion. I'd love to hear from you about what you feel this film has done, and if you like it or not, if you feel like I'm complaining. like I'll just like something, and I do.
Yeah.
There are things I like, and I would
Yeah.
have liked this film had somebody else made it and somebody else cared about like a little bit more about what they were doing,
Yeah.
instead of perpetuating harm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Assassination Nation. It is from 2018, and it's about after a malicious data hack exposes the secrets of the perpetually American town of Salem, chaos descends, and four girls must fight to survive while coping with the hack themselves. And it's directed by Sam Levinson, who also did Euphoria and The Idol. I've watched Euphoria, and I've felt emotions about it, and I do enjoy that parts of it exist.
Yeah.
Mostly for Zendaya, but
Yeah.
and like some of the other things that are happening, but there'll be more on that later.
Yeah.
Because I do have feelings about Sam Levinson that I can't, like, as a media literacy show, I have to talk about, because the film isn't just what's happening on the screen. It's everything around it and the influences that come about.
Yeah.
So, Assassination Nation is a bloody, intense thriller that mirrors a modern-day witch hunt, tackling head-on the chaos and hysteria fueled by sexism, social media, and toxic American ideals. It is a seething anti-sexist tale of vengeance with strong femme characters who retaliate to not only blunt violence, but the sexualization of their bodies. At least that's what they're telling you it's doing. They are telling you, like, strong on telling.
Yeah.
The film follows the lives of four teenage girls, Lily, Bex, Sarah, and Em. More like one and a half of these teenage girls.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets equal screen time.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I knew the name Sarah and Em, I'm gonna be honest, until I looked it up.
Yeah.
Which
they don't really give them any character development at all.
Or lines.
Yeah.
But it does follow them as they navigate the complexities of high school life in the digital age. So set in the seemingly idyllic suburb of Salem, a little heavy-handed because there's a witch hunt that occurs. The story takes a dark turn when a massive data breach exposes the private information of the town's inhabitants. So someone releases their emails, texts, and photos online, and the town descends into a frenzy of paranoia, violence, and revenge. As you would I don't think it would be that extent, but there is a great discussion of just like, what would happen if all of our secrets that we think are happening on the internet weren't so secret anymore, because it is the internet and the cloud exists, and nobody, all your stuff is just one data breach away from being shared, and is often shared with companies. Right? So your data is never not shared.
And I'll get into that a little bit, but it's a whole thing. And also it's like, if you're thinking about like what would actually happen if this scale, like it already does kind of happen, just like you don't get every single piece fed in a 1.5 gigabyte downloadable file, which is like a whole other weird thing. It's like, why would I even download that? It could be a virus, whatever. But it's like, it's not as everyone could read all your text messages and would take the time to do so without organizing it in any way. But you do get your data set everywhere. And the companies do have enough money and time to organize it in a kind of way that makes it useful to them.
Yeah. It's just like the motive here was really like, let's cause chaos. And they did. And And like, yeah, like we all have conversations or we share intimate details, things that we don't want to share with other people. It's not always bad things, but it can be taken out of context, which is what happens in the film too. Like somebody's life is completely upturned and it makes no sense for that to happen, but I also get why it does.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can really relate to that part of it. Like there are some things. Yes. So
Continue.
Lily is an outspoken teen who is often defending her right to exist in her body. She's confronting constantly other people in the way that they see her and like interpret her and her friends' existence and like manipulating the presence of her body.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because of the way that she's portrayed on screen.
Yeah.
She and her friends try to survive a world that sets extreme expectations upon them and still retain pieces of themselves. So Lily and the other girls find themselves targeted by the town's enraged residents who blame them for the leak at some point. So on top of the fact that like they're angry for other reasons, then they're coming after her because they think she's the one who released everything, which doesn't make any sense because she's one of the victims of the
Yeah.
leak. It like doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But as the town of Salem descends into madness, the girls must band together to survive the night and fight back against the town. And along the way, they confront issues of privacy, sexism, and the dangers of mob mentality in the age of social media. And in a gripping finale, they confront the dark forces that threaten to destroy their lives in the community they once called home. Or so you can infer.
Yeah.
Because the victory does not happen on screen.
Nope.
I never felt a win. I felt upset. I felt sad the whole time. So, like, it gave you the illusion of win.
Yeah.
It was like off screen, they fought back.
Yeah.
You know, like they fought like once.
Yeah, like for a minute, they killed a bunch of people. It was done.
So, this part of my section is called Mr. Levinson. Do you mind stepping off your high horse for a minute? I have just a few words because I think that man needs to come out of his entire ass for just a moment.
For a moment.
Here's some words. So this film is brimming with overt lecturing commentary delivered through lengthy monologues and blatant imagery. It reminds me of how we felt Midnight Mass in our Flanagan series was almost like Flanagan's diary, right? We felt like it was his innermost thoughts and explorations given life in those characters. Like a lot of those epic monologues felt like someone working through something.
Yeah.
This felt like constant lectures, right? It is an incessant diatribe, a feverish blend of hypersexualized teens and violence interspersed with Lily's musings and her just like, don't you feel awful that the world sexualizes teens? And I'm like, yeah, I do. It's just kind of hard to accept that message and that like rant and like ridicule while you're sexualizing teens on screen.
Yeah.
Like not just like them doing mundane things and us taking it out of like, you know, out of like what's happening, like imposing sexuality onto them when they're doing like regular life. No, you were over sexualizing them, and then being like, So unlike Flanagan's work, which felt both universal and personal, like the things that he was exploring in Midnight Mass felt like a universal experience or an experience that we all could relate to.
Yeah.
Levinson's feels like neither universal nor personal. It has nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
Which is really the big thing. Like, who are you to tell me? Like through Lily, like using Lily as your mouthpiece. Who are you?
Yeah, to be conveying this message. Yeah.
So, like throughout the film, I couldn't shake the feeling that I really wish that somebody else made this film.
Yeah.
Because I just like he's hovering there, and that it's apparent like it would be okay. Like I would even give him the benefit of the doubt. Like I'm not saying that people can't write stories and create stories of people who they aren't, like their own lived experience. I don't think you need to always write what you know in that way. Like you can learn and you can have other people contribute. But this is an instance where it is very clear that his lived experience and his viewpoints and his prejudices and his like toxicity infected the film.
Yeah.
if it worked, like if he did a great job and it wasn't gross, I would be like, great, good job. I'm so glad. That's not the case. So
Yeah.
each minute that Lily spent lecturing the audience on their sick, twisted fantasies of over sexualizing women, I recoiled. I was like, ew, like, what do you like? You're not telling me anything I don't already know.
Yeah.
So that's the high horse where I'm like, come on down, buddy.
Yeah.
What are you doing up there? You can break your neck. In one scene, Lily confronts her father, who mentions that he never felt comfortable around his young daughter when she was naked, like when she was a child, right? And this is because a character in the story is being the victim of this witch hunt because he had pictures of his child when she was in the tub and she was naked. I was like, I have pictures of my sister when she was a toddler in the tub and she's like covering herself up, but she's like naked in the tub because she's
Yeah.
a baby and not like that's
Yeah.
life. Never once was I like, oh no, I shouldn't like this is a baby.
Yeah.
And so Lily asked him why he would like put inappropriate connotations on a young girl's body, his own daughter's body. Like, why do you feel uncomfortable around my child body? Which is
Yeah.
absolutely right? Like, shouldn't a father feel comfortable and be able to bathe a young daughter?
Yeah.
Absolutely, without feeling any type of wrongness or sexual, literally anything.
Yeah.
That should be applicable, right? And she's completely right. And I would feel triumph. And I remember watching it the first time and being like, absolutely, that is true. Like, I'm
Yeah.
glad she said that.
Yeah.
Because there's certainly things to think through. There's certainly like the like not bringing your family around, like not bringing your kids around family members who do that, who are like,
Who
oh,
you
she
know
shouldn't
aren't
be.
safe. Yeah.
Yeah, any like grown man who's like, she shouldn't wear shorts that short. Like, excuse me, my baby, this baby.
Yeah.
Why? Do you want to expand on that? What's happening with you?
Yeah.
Because you just told on yourself, right? And
Yeah.
that's her. Like, and I in like initially when you're like hearing that, I'm like, yes, like that is absolutely true. And I would feel like a piece of triumph if the film wasn't screaming that nudity isn't inherently sexual while over sexualizing the bodies of these young girls in the same breath.
Yeah.
Right? Like Lily literally says that. Like it's not inherently, like nudity isn't inherently sexual. Point blank, that is true.
Yeah.
But the film was sexual. The film did sexualize nudity, right?
Yeah.
And to have Levinson at the helm of this film, who is notorious for over sexualizing young girls on screen, right? Euphoria, The Idol, this. It feels skeezy and it undermines itself, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he has written in like the first season of Euphoria so many scenes where the actresses were like, I don't think I should be naked for this scene, or I should be more clothed for this very emotional scene.
Yeah.
And like having to fight for that is creepy. Like these are high schoolers. Like even if the actors aren't, like these are portraying
high schoolers. Yeah.
So it's like, who are you? Like, and this is like before like, so it's just like, it's such a weird thing for him to be like, don't over sexualize girls. I'm doing it. This is my space and it's okay because I know that it's wrong.
Yeah.
No, buddy. So when we covered Tag a long time ago, which is a J-horror film that purportedly challenged the genre's over-sexualization and brutality towards young girls. Like that's what it told us it was doing.
Yeah.
We were left with a question. And I think we've taken that question that we discovered on that journey through our media literacy of that episode. And it has followed me through a lot of films that are like, we're confronting and like challenging stigma or tropes or like, you know, like we're trying to like address this problem. And the question is, when does subversion cross into exacerbation? Right. So like when does, like, where is the line of I am confronting this issue come to I am contributing to this issue further?
Yeah.
Because there is a line, right? At what point does satire in critical media just become another iteration of the problem, right? And unfortunately, this film falls into that category because I wanted so badly to like it. And I'll begrudgingly admit that there are many cinematic elements that live rent-free in my head.
Yeah.
Like for one, the very long shot of the house and they're like there are people who, the girls are in a house, and once the leak happens and they're like, the girls did it, these people in the town decide they're going to come and attack these young girls, because that's the logical conclusion for that. And it is a really brilliant shot. And it's the same thing where, like, I often reference one of my favorite long shots is from Spring Break, which is not a good film. But there are elements to that film I really like, as like from a cinematic perspective that I take, and I'm like, this is, and there's a long shot in that's brilliant. I love it so much. There's also like a colorization that happens in it. There's a lot that cinematically brilliant. The film itself, nobody. It ain't it. And that's the same thing with this. Like, I can, like, both things can be true. Yeah. I can appreciate some of the cinematic elements and understand that Levinson has a talent for portraying things in a certain way and doing it beautifully. And he has a shtick. He likes, like, putting school marching bands in it. He's got tropes, he's got his little things, like over-sexualizing teenagers. He loves doing it. Yeah.
And I mean, it matters who's telling the story, like, because you could use things as plot devices, but like if you're perpetuating harm through plot devices and you're as you said, telling on yourself, like, he's very clearly telling on himself because of what he uses for plot devices. And is it his right to use those things for plot devices? Probably not.
And people just keep letting him.
Yeah.
That's the issue I have. It's just like pass the torch now. Like, if clearly people are interested in stories like this, we could probably tell it a different way. And I'll give Levinson some credit, right? That he has become an inspiration for me to make my own films, right? Yeah. Like, I say this often, right? Where when I watch a film that makes me so angry, it just like fuels the fire, where I'm like, well then, baby, here I come. Yeah. I can actually confront these stereotypes and social issues without causing more harm, because I am aware of when it is causing harm. And I am a subject of that harm often, right? So, they do say, like, if you want to see a certain story happen and you're not seeing it out there, make it yourself. Yeah. So thank you. So the problem is that the film spends an absurd amount of time abusing these young bodies on screen. Yeah. Like, the majority of it is them being sexualized and in sexual situations or being brutalized. Like, hard stop. There's no real wins or victories or care for these characters, which I get, like, that could be your message, but like, it's a bleak one. It doesn't have any wins. And like, you branded this as like a revenge fantasy, and it's not that, right? It brutalizes, mutilates, and tortures the girls, and then brands them as heroines in the end. Like, at the end, it slaps on like, oh, look at us, we fought back. Yeah. I'm like, when, babe, when? It's a rushed version of the rape revenge trope, which the Ghouls notoriously despise. It's rushed in that, like, it spends 90% of the film doing the brutalization and gives us 5 minutes of revenge, the revenge, which is not, like, there should be a turning point in the middle, and then we should feel cathartic. I don't feel any of that. So any vengeance that happens feels less triumphant. It feels tacked on and undeserved. I don't feel a win when the girls kill their abusers, or even when they let them live. Yeah. I don't feel like, oh, they're the bigger person. I'm like, nah, kill them, kill everybody. Like, the girls themselves have a conversation in the film about rape revenge horror, and how if they wrote the film, they'd brutalize the men and let them play through the fantasy of retribution. And I was like, hell yeah, I would watch that. And it's just like, it's ironic to me that they're having that conversation, and that he would be like, he'd have the wherewithal to write that conversation and then not deliver anything close to that. Like, it's like I'm like, you're so close. Like, you were so close to the point, and then you just contribute to it. So, like, for all the commentary lauded for its feminist undertones, it is the feminine forms that are the most brutalized on screen. Their pain is at the center of the screen, and the real villains, which are plainly the men screaming, "We are good people," as they manhandle and grope and brutalize these young, bloody teenage bodies, are never given the same torture. Right? Their ends are met quickly through gunshots at a distance, or a swift slice at the neck as they gurgle to death just off screen. Like, we don't see that happen. It doesn't feel victorious, because I'm focused on her, who just suffered more harm and she doesn't even get to win. Like, it's not rape revenge at all.
Yeah.
Like, at least with those films, like, they get to like be excited about the revenge. Like, like they're still in it. Like, I don't know. For me, it's like, don't criticize pornography and then make a career out of making artsy teen pornography.
Yeah.
Like, he has like a whole line. One of his diatribes is like, the boy's like, I learned everything I know from porn. And she's like, that's the problem. Is it? Is that the only problem we want to talk about, babe? And that's the way we want to do it? Like, don't throw stones in your very glass house, buddy. My last rant about Levinson, before I get into like actual media literacy, like more than this, is that he's a thief.
Yeah.
In more ways than one. So stealing the careers of young women who refuse to conform to his unnecessary demands for skin and submission, like writing them out of a really great show where they were amazing characters because they didn't want to do what you said.
Yeah.
And a thief of art. The most well-known aspect of Euphoria, other than Zendaya being an amazing actor, is the Gen Z aesthetic. Right? Like, ads, trailers, entire dream sequences of Euphoria are drenched in a very specific look.
Yeah.
And I know you know what it is, right? And it's like this glare, it's like ethereal is the best way. It's sparkly. It's the colors, it's extremes. It's like this contrast. It is like a dream sequence. And that look does not belong to Levinson. It is not inspired by Levinson. And you can see he was very close to it in this film. He was getting there on his own, in his own little way, and he should have kept to this, because instead he stole it from photographer and videographer Petra Collins. So Petra was contracted by the Euphoria team to consult and work on the show, given her amazing art. She was set to direct episodes and help them complete the look. Only when the time came for her to make good on this opportunity, the team said that she was too young and pulled out. And first of all, she's not. Second of all, that's ageist and gross. And so instead, they stole her designs and entire artistic identity for a show that she never even got to work on. And it infuriates me as someone who has also suffered in a similar way in this industry, of someone being like, you're too young, you're too nice, like this. Like, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm not a piece of shit man that's like abusing people on set. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not that. That sucks. So you might actually recognize Colin's work if you've watched any of the music videos for Olivia Rodrigo's Good For You album. Stunning. And undeniably the inspiration for Euphoria. Like, look up any of her photography and you're like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Collins also did this really great photo set with the actors from Euphoria, like a few different ones that you should 100% check out. She did like a siren series with the actress who did Maddie. She's done one with Kat, the actress who plays Kat, who's the one who doesn't have as many scenes. You might wonder why. Things like that. Like, it's just like hard for them to have this conversation when this person's doing those things to them. So I just think like Levinson, you really owe her and literally anyone who's worked with you an apology. Okay. But don't look at me. Don't take your hate out on me. I just got here.
Yep.
That's what she says. So I digress. As I mentioned, I so badly wanted this film to be made by someone else. So let's unpack some of the themes addressed in the film, and just keep in mind how none of it actually really matters because Levinson's involvement perpetuates the harm. But here's what it was trying to do and what you maybe could take from it. And maybe we can ignore the glaring violence and harm.
Yeah.
And say, like, I learned something. I didn't. I know all this stuff already, but whatever.
Someone doesn't, I guess. You know,
maybe you need it to be this way. I don't know.
Yeah.
In the midst of violence, the vengeful third act sees Lily standing in front of a comically large American flag. Subtlety I've never heard of her, is what this movie subtitle is. In a lengthy monologue, she confronts both the townsfolk and America itself. As the town relentlessly pursues Lily and her friends, she metaphorically and literally turns the gun on the rest of the community, and she says, they may say it's because I'm behind this, or that I'm a whore, I'm amoral, I'm a homewrecker, I deserve it, I have it coming. I didn't hack anyone's shit, and I don't know who did. As for being a whore, amoral, and a homewrecker, sure. It doesn't hold a fucking candle to your righteousness. That's the real sickness here, your righteousness and hypocrisy. It's a simple fact that you can't live by the rules you set, yet you still pretend. This is your world. You built this. If it's too strict, tear it the fuck down. But don't look at me. Don't take your hate out on me. I just got here. From the moment I arrived, all I was given were orders. Smile, open up, cross your legs, spread your pussy, speak softer, scream louder, be quiet, be confident, be interesting. Don't be so difficult. Be strong. Don't fight back. Be an angel. Be a whore. Be a princess. Be anything you want to be, even the president of the United States of America. Just kidding. Right. And she goes on and on. It's a long one. And it's interspaced with like, we see girls watching it and they're like we can infer that they're like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And it, like, they look as bored as I am watching it. I'm going to be honest. It's like, it feels like she's like, look how kick-ass this is. And I'm like,
it's very white feminism. It's fine.
Yes. In a review in the LA Times, which I was very thankful for finding, titled Assassination is an exploitative horror that has the gall to lecture us on girl power, Katie Walsh speaks truth, saying, the dude really tried to mansplain the virgin horror paradigm in the midst of this exploitative claptrap. Right? So Levinson is doing entirely too much, so heavy-handed in his, see, I'm not like all men, I get it. It's criminal behavior. And he's lost in his own pride and so far up his own ass, he doesn't see how harmful the film actually is. And in discussing the mob of faceless townspeople, Walsh explains how they're not even the true villain. The artful misdirection of Levinson's filmmaking is, right? He distracts us with the violence and blatant lectures while palming the truth away, like an evil magician. She says, that may be representative of the chaotic random evil of an anonymous attacker in the hateful hetero white male mob. But visually, Levinson makes clear his target. He and cinematographer Marcel Rev, who establish a leering gaze directed at the girl's nubile bods, take much delight in wringing every sexy moment out of attacking young women, shooting scenes of violence that are gratuitously pornographic. Right? And to have Lily, right, in front of that American flag, preaching through the very screens that held her nudes, right, sent to a grown man who suffers no repercussions by the townspeople. And like the version we watched, I might be misremembering this and I imagined it. I thought his like wife left and was like, there was a scene of that. I think the one we watched was edited where it wasn't there, or I made that up.
Well, I mean, we watched it on Tubi, so we didn't have like the extended cut or anything like that. Yeah. So it's possible that does exist.
Possibly. The one we saw, nothing. We just like infer she's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. And then, anyway, these screens that she's like preaching to people on held her nudes mere hours ago. Right? Igniting a lackluster revolution of young women everywhere, when in every opportunity, Levinson objectified this young girl while claiming feminism. He's like, it doesn't count because she's strong. Nudity isn't inherently sexual, but it is when you do it like this, bud. Right? And so on a last note, on the laughable feminism of the film, Walsh gave me a very good laugh saying, this is common in the horror genre, but this goes above and beyond. And the difference is that Dario Argento never ended his film with a boneheaded lecture about feminism. He like did it, you know? Like there is over-sexualization in horror, and there's a way to critique it without being such a heavy-handed like, look, I'm a good person. Like it's giving like doth protest too much.
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to tell me? So some last themes the film covers are mob mentality. So Lily gives some bullshit statistics on how some people are good and others are bad, but oops, you didn't consider the internet and all that. American values or the eroding of civil liberties, like that whole tirade where she's like, you built this society. Lightly glazed and mentioned in the monologue tirade, right? One scene where I felt they did it truly right was when the girls call the police for help, but the pig that shows up contributes further harm. Like that felt believable. Like he was awful.
Yeah.
Like they call like for help. They're being abuse, and the guy shows up and then leads a tirade. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's fine. And lastly, the illusion of privacy, and whether this is the idea that anything we do or have done on the internet disappears, or the idea that we are not to be held responsible for our behavior online, because there is an illusion of separation, right? That our internet selves are someone else and therefore free from repercussions. But the witch hunt existed before the internet, and though this mob donned purge-style masks to retain their anonymity, most monsters say the quiet parts out loud and wear their hatred as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So, like, again, you're not saying anything that we don't already know, and also it's not entirely true. Like, there are, you know, like, keyboard warriors out there who think that they're, you know, separated from, like, repercussions, and they are. But again, like, the real witch hunts happened before the internet. People have been hating on women forever, and this isn't new. So there are quite a few things that I did enjoy about the film, and on our first watch, I vaguely remember enjoying most of it.
Yeah, we had good things to say the first time, which is just like, it shows the growth.
Yeah, I think just after years of forever, like, perpetually wearing our media literacy glasses, it's hard to see past this representation. It's why Lily's speech feels forced and like a lecture, while America Ferrera's incredibly similar speech in Barbie can hit significantly harder. Right? Like, when she's explaining the dichotomy that we live by, right? The expectations that are impossible to achieve as women in America or just the world, that felt real and resonated with audiences everywhere. And this doesn't. This feels like I'm being lectured by, like, it just doesn't hit. Right?
Yeah.
Because representation extends beyond on-screen characters. It includes those behind the camera. And even, like, representation wise, there's very few characters of color in this, and they're given no attention, no voices. The black girl in their group had like a line. I was like, oh, whoa, they gave her a line.
Minimal,
and she like half-ass delivered it. And then he had like the black marching band walking through this white suburban area, like,
and it was also like in a lot of the violence that took place, it happened a lot to black characters without giving them any screen time or autonomy, like, have wins. Like, they just brutalized the heck out of that family and like didn't talk about it again. Like, they killed that person's mom. Like, it was wild. And like literally was just like, it's fine, let's focus back on what's her name.
Yeah, Lily.
Yeah.
And like, it's black and trans. Like, the brutality that happens to Bex is horrific. And like, not to undermine Lily's experience, she also had some really awful things that were happening to her, and just close to being very awful, like even worse, right? But she still got retribution. Like, it's as half-assed as it was, like, she still did. And so just representation is a big deal.
And it's very like white feminism told from a male lens, and you could tell that that's what was happening.
Yeah, and I think despite Levinson's claims of involving young actors in the process, his continued dominance in storytelling feels inappropriate.
Yeah.
like if you get it, step away, right? He teased us with colorful girly pop feminism and delivered gore and booty shorts. It sensationalizes and capitalizes on the very issues that it claims to condemn, thereby undermining its message entirely, right? The use of sexual violence lacks depth and meaning, serving only to shock and titillate rather than to provoke genuine reflection or critique. It is an insincere critique of these issues. Instead of offering a meaningful examination of the ways in which society pathologizes female sexuality, the film reduces these complex issues to mere spectacle.
Yeah, and you're not left with anything. You know what I mean? Like, there's no next step. There's no like, oh, this is what I should do. Like, literally, it's just like, go get guns and shoot the bad guy. Like, that's not revolution. Sure, absolutely. But like, you can't, like, there's no message at the end that's like, you should go do this. Let's work together, solve some problems. It's not that.
Yeah, and I think like there's one line that I feel like was actually the hidden thesis of the film, is when Bex decides not to kill someone, and they're like, not all men, right? And they like laugh, and it felt very disingenuous, especially because like it was all men. And he
Yeah.
he didn't string it up, but he didn't stop them. You were still going to die, like, from these transphobes. Like, you were going to be murdered. And a thing that happens quite often in our country for these reasons. And you were like, well, I'm not going to let him die because because he didn't exactly kill me, but he did. Like, if you're an observer of violence, you are also a contributor.
Yeah.
And that's the whole film. That's the whole film to me.
The film
is
was
like,
not all men. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, but it was like, actually, yes, all men.
Yeah.
The film taught me that actually it is, yes, all men.
Yeah. It was the time. I'll get into my section. You know, I also critique a little bit. I was like, when I first read my script, I was like mad, and I was writing, and I was like, oh wait, Gabe's gonna cover a lot of this. All right, erase. I'll just let Gabe say it, and then I'll just say a little bit, and then I'll move on. But essentially, the rewatch of this film definitely hit differently than it did the first time. Gabe and I like texted each other. We're like, ow. I just like feel like crap now, and I usually I feel like, oh, we had some catharsis that didn't take place. So when we initially covered it, we really loved, like, I remember us liking it. We told people to watch it. Like, we had recommended it to people. I remember. So it's just like really interesting to witness.
Sorry, y'all.
In just like a 4 years, like is it how long it's been? About 4 years. Like how much our media analysis classes have cemented to our faces, and our opinions just have like grown and changed, and that's like kind of cool to witness in real time. I think that's something interesting that our show allows us to do, is that like we can recover things and be like, actually, you know, friends, we're going to say the part, we missed it. We missed the line here. Now we're going to correct that with new information. So
we ain't afraid to grow. We ain't afraid to be wrong. Like,
yeah. And I think this is evidence of that. So it's just thought it was kind of cool, like witnessing like the change that took place, because we really liked this film initially when we first watched it. So and I think a big influence of this feeling is because of the state of the world. Like, we just have learned so much more in these years and our access to the technology. Like, 2018 internet feels different than 2024 internet.
Yeah, for sure.
This watch just wasn't cathartic, and honestly just hit us on the other end of that, where Gabe and I both were just depressed about the world after finishing this film. And like, it's because the horrors of the world right now are so vast and all-encompassing because of the internet. Like, we just see so much in our phones. So that when we rewatched this, it was seeing this film felt as 2018 as it was.
Yeah, this is pre-TikTok, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, you just like feel you're being fed it a very specific way, and it feels manipulative. Because we're more able to witness and unpack these manipulative things as they're happening because of the way we process media and information now. So it just added to the stress we were already feeling. It wasn't like, oh, cool, I feel like I should go fight stuff. It's like, oh, wow. I just want to go to bed and cuddle my cats. So witnessing the hypocrisy of this town and their violent denial of accountability just felt too close to reality. It, as Gabe said, it's a perpetuator of the harm instead of a point of catharsis and healing from the harm, or like giving us the strength and power to do something differently. It's just perpetuating that feeling. But there was one piece of the film that stand true to the test of time that we've discussed before, which is the perception of goodness and the concept surrounding impact over intention. We have like these characters that are like, America, we are good people. I'm a good person. Even Lily, at multiple times in her white feminism time, was like, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. And I'm not saying she was not a good person, but like the fact that that's what we're centering right now is whether or not people think you're a good person. That's not the priority in all the violence and horrible things that are happening. It should not just be if people are perceiving you as a good person. There is real violence and harm happening to the people I care about and love, and I should be protecting them. We should be working together to protect each other. So that's something that still stood out as being like, we're witnessing the real impact of American harm, self-righteousness, and hypocrisy live. Currently, today, literally on our phones, we are inundated with information at a rate and a scale that is genuinely overwhelming. It's just that this film is pre-TikTok. I think TikTok just changed the world, changed how we perceive things and input. And I think that's honestly probably a big piece of why this just didn't hit how it did in 2020 when we first watched it, which we were just getting TikTok at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So America has literally been outed for what it really is right now at a comparatively unprecedented rate. Like the America has been, what they did in this town has happened to
Mm-hmm.
America. History, we're very aware
A lot of times
of what the bad guy is, at least more so than we had been in previous. And it's an unprecedented rate because we're unlearning so much and realizing so much about what our government is actually doing. And at least depending on your algorithm and how plugged in you are to social media. But what we see play out in Assassination Nation is a collective fear of accountability and scapegoating that America is super familiar with, especially the generations that were not raised on this level of connectivity and access to information. And we're seeing like this fight between the older generations and the younger generations in a way that's like really gross and like without care. And like, it's like they all kind of just became the idea of ideas instead of like actual people. But essentially, those that are more attached, the messages that those are more attached to the system will fight to preserve it because it is what they perceive as right, even if that impact is harm on innocent people. And the message I took away from Assassination Nation is that America is the town of hypocrisies and assholes, and we need to be a united front as humans to band together and protect people from harm and deliver accountability. I think that's like, that is what he was maybe trying to say. If someone else took this film, as Gabe said, someone else made it, that was like the theme, is that at the end, in the last 5 minutes where we're supposed to feel some sort of victory and catharsis, it's band together, everyone get your pink hats and march, you know, like it really, like, it was like, let's join together and do it, you know, and that's what the vibe kind of was, but we just didn't get that. Oh, I feel better, you know. I feel like we could do this. I have been given some sort of tool to teach me how.
Like, we could save some of the runtime that was dedicated to over-sexualizing the girls, and instead taking that time to actually build up relatable characters and visual justice.
Lines to characters, like the characters that would be leading the revolution.
That's
and not Lily. It's fine. It's not. But you know what I'm saying? Ultimately, the film also calls to the power of the internet, but in a way that feels as dated as it was, but acknowledges just how uncontrollable the internet really is. There's like a random teen that's on screen for a minute who talks about not sympathizing with the people getting their information spread because older generations are fighting against something that cannot be stopped. It's like for like 2 seconds, and they're like waiting for her to explain it, and then just like it goes into something totally different. But
you gotta make time for the butts.
Yeah. And the reason a government, a collection of fossils, fears TikTok. I'm this like my fifth like rant about this. Honestly, I like went back and rewatched some of our clips, and I was like, I can't get off this hill because like it's so evident that like the fear of the internet and all. There's danger
the power
in it, actually,
of accessibility to information.
But the danger, as you said, and the power of the internet is something that like the older generations just fear so much because we're being fed information and like we're able to like see pattern recognition. Friends, we have a whole generation of neurodivergent humans who one of the diagnosing factors is pattern recognition. And we're being fed patterns and information, and we're able to see like all the hypocrisy and the genuine just like blatant lies that are being perpetuated by our government. We're like, no, you're wrong, friend. Like what? Not even friend at this point. There's a lot of people who I just don't like
fossils.
At this point. Fossils. But ultimately,
fossil.
It's literally like it's a whole thing, but. We are learning what this country really is, and we're learning who the real bad guys are, and they really don't want us to do that. This is like my fifth rant about it. They're reacting to our protests, our call-outs, our delivering of accountability, very similar to how the suburban town did in the film, with violence, self-righteousness, and ignorance. They're like, what do you mean, democracy? We're the good guys. They're
literally saying not to have democracy anymore.
They're like, yes, one side saying not to have democracy anymore, and the other side's like, the only reason you should vote for me is because they say we're not going to have democracy anymore. And it's like, if I'm voting, fascism is when you don't have a choice in who you're voting for, and if we're given two abhorrently horrible choices, isn't that just we're already there? It's fine. Whatever. It's fine. It's not. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that, like, the older generations, as they said, they're so scared of the internet and everything it has and the access to information. And they're the mob of violent, angry townspeople allied with the police attacking these people, like, who are literally just living their lives. And they're just like, nope. The next section I'm going to cover is data security and privacy. Much like the snarky teen said in the film, privacy's dead. And we might as well accept that. The American government only cares about our privacy and data protection as long as they can be the ones to exploit it. And I'm going to cover a little bit like, yeah, we don't have this releasing of information where it's like you're getting small town doxing adventure. Like, you're not like, they're not sending, being like, oh, this person's with this person, look, mob them with Salem witch trial, like, antics. Like, it's not that. We are having all of that data instead fed to companies and corporations and being like, your data privacy is not, it doesn't exist ultimately, because there's only so many companies that you can work with and they're all working together, sending your data everywhere. So I read some articles about Facebook, specifically Meta, and the way that they share our data, and it's super gross, unsurprisingly. So essentially, we know the whole, we have to get rid of TikTok because they're funneling data. And it's like Meta and Amazon specifically have been doing that for a long time. It only is a problem if it doesn't directly benefit wallets. So Meta's use of tracking and the lobbying against other social media platforms is an example of this. While it is not as flashy and dramatic as videos being shared to our neighbors or our text being leaked to people we know, our data is being shared with thousands of companies every day. And in an article titled, "Each Facebook User is Monitored by Thousands of Companies" by The Markup and written by John Keegan, they delve into the extensive scale of data tracking by Facebook, well, Meta specifically, because they own both, as revealed by a study conducted by Consumer Reports. This study used data of 709 volunteers who shared their Facebook data archives, finding that on average, participants' data was sent to Facebook by 2,230 companies, with some having over 7,000 companies involved. The study, supported by The Markup, highlighted server-to-server tracking, where data goes directly from a company server to Meta servers, a form of tracking typically invisible to users. So it's essentially when you're like, you can give my information to companies so that they know what I want to buy. That's the exchange that's taking place, essentially. So essentially, although the study sample may not represent general U.S. population due to its like volunteer status, like people had to volunteer to have their data checked in order to do this.
Which is so funny because they don't volunteer to have it sent out.
Nope. And a lot of time, Meta specifically, and like other companies like it, are being like called out because a lot of these things, in terms of like giving permissions to Meta and other companies to track this data, if you don't want them to, there's like intentional, barriers that they'll create essentially, so that you can complain, but like they either just won't, you'll feel like you did something and it doesn't matter because they're not going to change what they're doing.
And everything's a hurdle to get.
And they do that on purpose so that you don't get to what you're trying to do. They're making it hard on purpose. So Meta defends its transparency tools, but Consumer Reports pointed out issues such as unclear data provider identities and ignored opt-out requests. So you can opt out and they still just ignore those requests, if you can pick up on the fact that they're ignoring them and call them out on that, and then they just don't answer your correspondence or like suppress your account. Prominent companies like LiveRamp, Home Depot, Walmart, and Amazon were frequently found in sharing data with Meta. So Amazon, one of the largest data collectors that exist, is also sharing with Meta, another extremely large data collector. And they're all just like, if you can't see the screen because you're listening visually or you're listening through your ears, I was doing like amalgamation mosh pit with my hands. So that's what I was trying to convey, is that they're all working together. They're all just buddy-buddy, you know. And the study examined two types of data collected, custom audiences and events. So custom audiences involve advertisers uploading customer lists, while events include interactions like visiting a website or physical store, often tracked via Meta's pixels or SDKs. This form of tracking can reveal sensitive activities such as dialing suicide hotlines or booking medical appointments. So things like BetterHelp, for example, I don't want to ruin BetterHelp for everybody, but they're one of the companies that but like therapy is hard to get. I get it.
Yeah.
People need therapy. Absolutely. But BetterHelp is one of the companies that like sells data specifically that could be used against you down the line, because they're like, hey, this person opened up about their feelings and they're maybe not good for this job or whatever. Like, they share the information with other companies as well as the government, and like that information could be used against you down the line. We're all like doing this like trust experience, which is not what we should be doing with data and the government, where we're like, it's fine until it's not. Like they say that it's going to be chill. Yeah, but it's like, even if you don't, stuff can be used against you. It's fine. But yeah, they can send information such as if you are booking medical appointments, etc. And to view data shared with Facebook, users can access their data through Facebook settings through a process. But the process is really cumbersome and may leave users with lingering questions due to the very vague identification of many companies. Like it's really hard to tell where your data is actually going and to like fight back against that, because it's just like this exchange. Consumer reports and privacy advocates recommend several policy changes to improve data privacy, such as data minimalization strategies, enhanced powers for authorized agents to act on behalf of customers or consumers, so you can have someone like fight for you that isn't on their payroll, increased ad transparency, and better readability of data made available by Meta. So they're like, make it easier for people to understand so they can know what they're selling themselves off to. And they're like, they're not going to do that. It's like telling, I'm not going to get into another. It's like, but you're telling the person doing the harm to monitor the harm. That's not, they're not going to monitor the harm. Why would they? Because then they can't, they'd have to stop doing harm. They don't want to. Common sense. It's fine. These recommendations aim to shift the burden of privacy protection from consumers to businesses and legislators. But despite Meta's commitment, in quotes, to evolving data practices, the absence of federal policy law limits consumer options in most states. When it comes to other kinds of data leaks, apparently there have been 14 major data leaks in 2024 alone, including Ticketmaster, JP Morgan and Chase, Dell, Dropbox. This was my favorite. The U.S. government. Trello, and Bank of America. So there's been a ton of data leaks. Last year, there's like even more. It kind of goes through like all the data leaks in recent years. And it's an upsetting amount of things. And I found an article on how to get Facebook to not track you. It's pretty convoluted, but it does give you kind of like a step-by-step way to do it. The best thing to do, and if a lot of people are doing that specifically with like AI and like Meta specifically going to pull all user data to funnel through and train AI systems. Lots of artists and creatives have been pulling their content from Meta platforms and putting them on other platforms. So like for artists, they're using Kara, which is like dedicated to not using data ever to be funneled through AI, and also like don't have like ad traffic and other kind of tracking based things that Meta does. To the point where like they became the number 5 social media app overnight. But it's specifically for artists. So it's funneled in that way where it's not like for everybody necessarily. I guess it could develop into that if they maintain their commitment to protecting against AI. But the best thing you could do is leave those social media platforms for ones who do like make it not profitable for them to exploit you. Kind of like what we were saying last week, where it all comes down to money. And coming for their money. So to leave Facebook and make it so that they aren't the industry standard, Adobe also has recently been flagged as funneling all their things through AI. So you have to like find other programs that aren't doing that are open source, that are publicly accessible. We all have to work together to like train each other on that, essentially. So that's the next step to take in fighting data collection from big companies. It is hard. I'm not going to lie to you. There's another article and section of my section where I was kind of like thinking about like what happened in this town and how it specifically targeted young people. And what I found in some of my searches was that unfortunately there are countless threats to young people on the internet, but the one major one is the digitization of important records and assets that are not being protected appropriately by institutions, essentially. So apparently young people are targets of hacking and data leaks especially recently, because they're the longest to be victim of these data leaks. Essentially, people are targeting them specifically, like children, because when you steal their identity, you'll be able to do that for a really long time because they're kids. So in an NPR article titled "Hackers Are Targeting a Surprising Group of People, Young Public School Students," they unpack a cyber attack in which many young people's data was released/stolen in February of 2023. Minneapolis Public School experienced a severe cyber attack where hackers stole and released sensitive data, including social security numbers, school security details, and information on sexual assaults and psychiatric holds after the district refused to pay a ransom that they had. The breach affected over 105,000 students with data that included health records and privileged information now accessible online. This incident reflects a growing trend of cyber attacks targeting K-12 schools as they are increasingly rely on technology. And these data breaches can have long-lasting consequences for students, including identity theft and misuse of sensitive personal information. Essentially, children's identity information is particularly valuable to hackers since it can be exploited for years before being detected, and schools store extensive data beyond just grades, such as medical histories and disciplinary records, which can be used by cyber criminals to cause significant harm. So the Minneapolis attack exposed the vulnerabilities of school data storage practices, and advocates note that specifically BIPOC students, who are the ones disproportionately disciplined because of how we police our students in schools, are especially at risk, and that stolen records can impact students' futures, affecting college applications, job prospects, and legal outcomes. Kind of like how Better Health can tell the government if you're depressed. They're having records of everything you did when you were a child. And it doesn't even like touch on like credit, which is like a whole other issue where you're destroying their ability to access futures when the country as a whole prioritizes credit as like the method to having financial stability. So there's like parents who are speaking that like the district itself is not doing enough to heal this wound that is taking place, because they're like, they offered free credit monitoring and guidance on preventing identity theft, but the steps were not like explained in a way that made sense to the parents, and also just like weren't enough. Like these children's entire identities were stolen and are going to be manipulated and used, and like someone needs to like step in and like wipe a clean slate for them. That like if it wasn't them, there needs to be like governmental measures in place to, or like like something that can happen to like fixes that for these children, because that's going to be a problem, especially as more we digitize and these records, and then inadvertently like, don't protect these children. And that's like a big theme of this film is that adults are not protecting the kids at all and don't care about them. Like it's a whole thing. But this actual real life scenario is something that's like kind of like representative of that, like not lack of care in like this very sensitive and important information of these students, and like they just did not protect them. And this is nothing to do with doxing, which is a whole other can of worms to unpack, but it does pose a more threatening image of the digital age, especially when in the hands of a generation like the ones who are in positions of power who just don't understand what the internet is. Not being able to put in the necessary protections that would make the internet a safe place in the future, instead just wanting to censor things, and like they're putting all their effort in the wrong place because they don't understand what the internet actually is. They don't understand how the internet works, and therefore can't actually protect the younger generations from harm, and instead just perpetuate it. So I'm going to find some resources that are less depressing to put at the end of my blog so that you can have something to like work towards. Because there definitely is like, there's people doing things, not necessarily there are people doing internet protection, but like if we're talking about protecting young people and futures of society and like each other and building community and to fight oppressive systems, like I got tons of resources on that. So you can have some next steps there.
Yeah, I think it's like, especially with the generations that are in charge, everything was paper. Everything was filed away and inaccessible. And now we have generations whose entire existence is on the internet. Like from the moment they were brought into the, even before they were brought into the world, like we have digital like ultrasounds, you know, like that, those things are like, it's an entirely different world. And so if you don't have the information or knowledge of like how those things function or the impact of it, it's hard for you to ensure that it's safe, because it doesn't even occur to you what the possibilities are for danger. So absolutely.
And what happened at that school is just clearly shows that the people in charge did not understand what digitizing those records would mean. And like they needed the government of that place needed to have more funding for those schools so that they could appropriately protect and like have security for those records, and they did not. So it's a failing on the government end for protecting those kids from what happened, and will probably continue to happen in an exorbitant amount if we continue along this line of like the people in charge not understanding the priorities that need to take place within protecting kids. So
and all that to say, like there were aspects of this film that like absolutely are true, right? There are some, like I said, comments that were made, and you know, Levinson did say like that he sought the wisdom of the young people that he was working with, so maybe some of those lines that really hit were from them, you know. And I, you know, there's could be something to be said about that. I just think like these stories absolutely need to be told. It's not like it's old news, right? It is something that like is important. I just think like the way that we approach the content, and if we are setting out to confront issues that are happening on screen, we can't continue to contribute to them. Like, you know, like there just has to be some care given into it, and it's not. And so you're just like perpetuating the harm, and you are no better than the people that we're seeing on screen that you're telling us like, and clearly are the villain. But, and it's supposed to be us, right? It's supposed to be this reflection of America as a whole. But it was just like, you're on a soapbox that you have no business being on. And then you're like, it felt very politician. Like you're lecturing us while doing the same thing, and profiting off of the industry that's doing those things.
And it's all about like who you give the microphone to, right? And someone else could have told the story, and like if you want the story to be told, uplift the people who could tell the story better than you. And that's not what he did. He said, "I can tell the story. It's fine. I'll do it," and didn't account that all of his biases were going to be portrayed on screen, and that his centering of the characters that he centered and the decentering of those that he didn't, and then all the harm that he put on all those bodies, like. He should not have been the one carrying this message. He should have, if he believed in it, he should have uplifted a different creator to do it.
Exactly. Like use like the resources you have. And like it's not enough to have these people on screen. Like, and I think that's a big part of media literacy that people don't always understand. It is not enough that, you know, you have trans representation, right? It's like, what are you telling with those stories? Is this harmful? Are you creating narratives that could hurt someone who is discovering that about themselves? And you know, parts of it are you're letting yourself be like letting them have a mouthpiece for it, right? Like talking about the hate of the politician who, you know, was doing all that harm, and the like it coming back around. But even that is like toxic too. Like I hate that narrative of like homophobic politician is actually gay and that's why they're harmful. Like, no, sometimes people are straight and harmful. Sometimes they're not. They don't need to be in the closet and trying to suppress. Like, you don't need to make me try to feel bad for them. Which is why I was like, Bex was right. It's just like, I don't feel bad. That person would not blink if I was murdered or like my life was ruined. And actually would be celebrating it. So I'm going to do the same for them. That was like the valid part of that. But I think like the existence of that narrative was already a problem. So there are some hits, but it's a lot of misses just because of the package that it's in, because it is Levinson's story. And I really wanted to like it a lot more. And I remember having done that and in this, and I do think, like, I'll re-listen to our last episode because I do think there was some critique there. I do think we were like, this feels like it. Like you're ranting to me. Like, what is happening? And again, this is before Euphoria. This is before he really took, and then before The Idol, which is like really he was telling on himself.
Yeah.
And The Weeknd, he was telling on The Weeknd, but I only give Weeknd some props because he has been putting his own money into the cause. So
yeah,
I won't yell at him. He gets he gets a pass for a month.
Yeah.
And then he'll come back around. But yeah, let us know what you think about Assassination Nation, what you think about Sam Levinson. I hope you check out Petra Collins' work and see how clear that inspiration is. Let us know what you think. If there's recommendations for films or series or books that do this in a better way, I'd love to hear it. We will be covering a bunch of just like teen drama woes for this series, which should be fun. And we made some discoveries while like assembling this series together. And so I hope you have a fun time watching the films and then unpacking them with us, and always wearing your media literacy glasses because it's super important to know, especially in this day and age when our media is under attack and our access to information and to knowledge about what we're being given, right? Like media literacy is so incredibly important right now. Like you should be questioning and unpacking and critiquing everything that comes through a screen or like whether it's audible, visual, what like reading, whatever it is, you really need to be aware of and asking yourself some core questions about like, who is this for? What is it doing? What's its intent? You know, like
who wrote it? What's their bias?
Yeah, because that, like, I think like that's really going to make or break a lot of the things that are coming down the way is how aware we are of the media that we're ingesting and the impact that it can have, because a film is never just a film, right? A book is never just a book. A song is never just a song. Everything means something. It's just a matter of whether or not you peeped it.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't get married.
Let your kids. And hopefully your kids are okay.
Or they'll steal your kid's identity. That's really scary. Honestly, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Those poor babies. All right, well, bye.
Bye.